Hello everyone. I think we can start our webinar now. Okay. My name is Shama. I'm from Academy of Sciences Malaysia. So welcome to the webinar on open science. For your information, this webinar is jointly organized by Malaysia Association of Research Managers and Administration alongside with Academy of Sciences Malaysia and Malaysia Open Science. It is our intent to raise awareness, trigger interest, and share insights on how open science movement has emerged in the past years. And in this webinar, we'll be discussing about the future of open science in Malaysia itself. So without prolonging, I would like to invite Professor Dr. Shaliza Ibrahim, the President of Malaysia Research Association and Manager Association and Administration to deliver a welcoming remarks.
Thank you, Shama. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Assalamualaikum and a very good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the Malaysia Association of Research Managers and Administrators, or MyRMA, I firstly would like to thank Academy of Sciences Malaysia, ASM, for co-organizing this webinar with MyRMA. And we welcome everyone and thank you all for participating in this webinar on open science. MyRMA was established in 2019 as a national level association open to all individuals and institutions interested in supporting research management objectives. The formation of MyRMA signifies our readiness to enhance research management at the professional level on par with international practices. Over the last year, we have held a few seminars and workshops on grant management, patent search, and bibliometrics. We have also planned to do more workshops and sharing sessions in 2021. We do engage with international research management associations, including MyRMA, ARMA, ARMS, and the Japan Research Administrators Network. Research managers are individuals involved in research processes, and their services are required at various points in the research life cycle. Research managers' roles and responsibilities include advising researchers on the requirements of procedures pertaining to research and on policy implementation. Open science concerns the proper management of raw research data sets, which is very much within the domain of research management. Hence, it is very important for research managers to have a basic understanding of open science. I'm sure they will be able to learn good knowledge from this webinar. I thank our esteemed panelists, Yang Berusaha Profesor Nur Saadah, our Deputy Vice Chancellor in UM, Yang Berbahagia Profesor Datuk Mazlan, and Yang Berbahagia Profesor Datuk Rohana for your contribution as speakers. I would also like to thank MyRMA committee members, especially Dr. Tan Xiao Wei and Dr. Hafiz, and the ASM team, particularly Shama and Hanisa, and I'm sure the rest of the team, for all your efforts in preparing this webinar. Now I would like to take this time to introduce our moderator for this afternoon. She is Professor Abriza Abdullah from the Department of Library and Information Science, UM. Prof. Abriza is the chairman of the Working Group on Capacity Building and Awareness of the Malaysian Open Science Alliance. In her career at UM, she has been Dean of the Faculty of Computer Science and Information Technology and Dean of the Institute of Postgraduate Studies. Prof. Abriza was instrumental in the development of the Malaysian journal hosting platform, MyJournal, and a national citation index system, MyCites. She is currently Chief Editor of the Malaysian Journal of Library and Information Sciences. Thank you, Prof. Abriza, for moderating this session. And without further ado, I would like to hand the floor over to you and wish everyone an enjoyable and productive webinar on open science. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Shaliza, for your kind introduction. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and selamat sejahtera. I'm Abriza and I would like to welcome everybody to the webinar on open science. This is a webinar that introduces the viewers. I understand that particularly we are introducing this to the research managers as well as various interested parties to open science. Why is it important? We are going to position and discuss Malaysia's very own initiative, that is the Malaysia Open Science Platform. The speakers will also describe global initiatives as well as the strategies and the actions aimed at promoting open science principles and acknowledging open science practices in Malaysia. Before I introduce you to the speakers, okay, I would like, for those of you who are following this webinar on the Malaysian Open Science Platform Facebook page, please share it with your friends, your acquaintances on any social media platform, be it your Twitter or your Facebook. Please use the hashtag MOSP and hashtag Open Science to disseminate the information. And throughout this 40-minute session, please, we are going to keep the microphone muted, yeah? But we really would like to hear from you and would like to include the viewers, your voice in the conversation. So please ask questions. You may share comments, ask questions, but you only use the chat panel, okay, on the right side of the Zoom application to share at any time during the webinar. Okay, so at this point, I would like to introduce you all to our featured speakers so that we can get into our content. So today we have three illustrious academicians who are our very own, I would say, our very own open science thought leaders. They are all females. Okay, the first is Prof. Saada. The second panelist is Professor Datuk Mazlan Osman, and the third panelist is Prof. Datuk Dr. Rohana. Allow me to read a brief biodata of each panelist. Okay, Prof. Saada. Prof. Saada is currently the Deputy Vice Chancellor, Research and Innovation, University of Malaya. Her career in UM began in 1990. So this is the 60th year. As a lecturer in the Department of Chemistry, Prof. Saada is also involved in several international research collaborative programs, such as being the Malaysian coordinator for cutting-edge organic chemistry program involving 8 countries in the Asian region, as well as being the co-principal investigator for UM in the Newton-funded collaborative project with the University of Manchester. Prof. Saada is the Fellow of the Academy of Sciences Malaysia. In 2016, Prof was accorded the Top Research Scientist Award by ESM. In 2019, Prof. Saada was appointed as the chairperson of Malaysian Open Science Alliance due to her keen interest and passion towards advocating open science in Malaysia. Prof. Nur Saada also is a representative for Malaysia at UNESCO Open Science Advisory Committee since 2020. Our second panelist is no other, okay, the Malaysian first astrophysicist, academician, Professor Emerita Datuk Sri Dr. Mazlan Osman, who is currently the Director of International Science Council, Regional Office for Asia and the Pacific. Datuk Mazlan established the National Planetarium under the Prime Minister's Department, and she was also the founding Director General of the National Space Agency, Angkasa. And in this capacity, she established the National Observatory in Langkawi and the National Space Center in Selangor. Datuk Mazlan headed the National Angkasawan program, which saw the launch of the first Malaysian to the International Space Station in 2007. Datuk was the Director of United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs for almost 10 years. She is currently a member of the Malaysian Open Science Alliance since November 2019. Our third speaker, Datuk Professor Dr. Rohana Yusof, who is also a fellow of the Academy of Sciences Malaysia. Datuk Rohana is currently an honorary professor in the Department of Molecular Medicine, University of Malaya. She previously held the position as the director of ACAP, Akademi Kepimpinan Tinggi, Pengajian Tinggi, and prior to this, she was the Deputy Vice Chancellor at University of Malaya, and she served as the board member of various board such as the Educational Malaysia Global Services, Corporate Services, Farmer Uji, and on various committees during her term as the Deputy Vice Chancellor. Due to her vast experience and knowledge, Datuk Rohana has been appointed as the chairperson for the Working Group on Policy under the Malaysian Open Science Alliance. Okay, so we are going to start off with our session. The first, I would like to welcome Prof. Saadah, and Prof. Saadah will enlighten us about the what and why of open science, what is the rationale for it, and also what is the open science concepts and principle practiced by MOSP. Prof. Saadah, over to you, Prof.
Thank you, Prof. Abriza. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, I would like to thank MyRMA for inviting us, to give some information on open science and its initiative in Malaysia. So I'll just tell you a little bit about what is going on in Malaysian initiatives of open science. Next slide, please. Okay, so what exactly is open science? Open science actually is not really anything new for researchers. I think we've been practicing this for a long time because there's a lot of demand, societal demand for access to scientific knowledge, especially the results of the work that we've done. So the in the UK, the Royal Society of England in the late 1600 actually started the first academic journal devoted to science called the Philosophical Transaction of the Royal Society, which function is to actually disseminate information based on the research findings. But due to the advancement of technology and the progress of WWW or the Web of Science, World Web of Science, spearheaded by CERN, open science has taken a new approach to scientific process, where scientists and researchers started to diffuse knowledge or information they generate by using the digital platform and other new collaborative tools. So open science is more than just open access. It encompasses practices such as publishing open research and campaigning for open access for research output, encourage scientists to practice open notebook, and generally make it easier for us to publish, as well as share and communicate the data and knowledge that we have accumulated. But when we talk about open science, we do not really necessarily mean that it is free science, because it is actually essential to ensure that the intellectual property of a researcher is protected before we make the knowledge possible to everybody publicly. So open science has the World Open Science idea or philosophy at the moment is, it is not free for everybody, but it is as open as possible for us to share, but it can be closed as when necessary. Okay, next slide, please. So what is in Malaysia? The Malaysian landscape is, in terms of Malaysia, okay, we spend about 1.4% of our GERD on, in 2018, for example, on R&D activities. We have, in terms of researchers, more than 2,000 full-time equivalent from the research institutes or government research institute and agencies doing research full-time. At the higher learning of institution, we have more researchers, a total of more than 55,000 full-time equivalent researchers, or more than about 72,000 researchers from the high institution learnings in Malaysia, both public and private. So from these researchers, we generate between 2001 to 2017, more than 230,000 research papers, which was indexed by Scopus and actually have garnered more than 1.7 million citations and more than 15,000 domestic patents. These are just the ones that are indexed and the ones that we know. But there are others that perhaps they are not actually reported and indexed by any indexing, published journal. So there are many information and data out there that are circulating around in Malaysia. So next slide, please. So the idea was to actually try to actually gather as much information on this data. Hence, the Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation at the time when this was initiated was MESTEC, not MOSP, through the through the Academy of Sciences, initiated this project called Malaysian Open Science Platform, and actually formed a Malaysian Open Science Alliance Group. This open science is aligned to the Dasar Science, Technology and Inovasi Negara, which was recently launched by our YB Minister, the DSTIN 2021-2030. The second thrust of which involve advancement of technology through RDCI NI, okay? On the sixth strategy in terms of perkongsian data terbuka or sharing of open data. This was launched by MESTEC then, MOSP now, in 2019, and we began with a 2-year pilot project starting 2020, which is actually supposed to end this year, inshallah, linking all 5 research universities and as many as possible the research institute under MOSP. And in this project, we aim to look at 3 initial main areas. First, to actually do a landscape study to see how Malaysian researchers see or if they are even aware of open science, and actually to also formulate guidelines for our open science for Malaysia, which I think Dr. Rohana will be talking about later. We also hope to build capacity and awareness because we understand that when we are doing open science, we really need to have a proper, data that we actually deposit. So, the term garbage in, garbage out by computer scientists, it comes into play here. So we have to make sure that the data that comes in are really curated and actually well documented so that we know what they are for sharing later, so that, it is a good source of information. And we also look at infrastructure for the open science platform, how we can actually have, this data deposited and a repository for this data for us to be able to pull it out when we need it or should we need it later. Next, please. Next. Okay. So the purpose of MOSP or the Malaysian Malaysian Open Science Platform is to actually to gather and consolidate Malaysia's research data, which we know is a valuable national asset. We have actually spent a lot of money, and we know that there's a lot of information. So these are valuable national asset in the we want to gather them in a platform that would enable accessibility and sharing of this data, research data, in accordance to the FAIR principle. As I mentioned earlier, this is not necessarily free, but open science actually, for Malaysia, we actually subscribe to the FAIR principle, which is the findable, accessible, interoperable, and reproducible principle. And we hope that the Malaysian Open Science Platform will be strategic transformative initiative for Malaysia to strengthen our STI collaborative ecosystem in achieving the shared prosperity vision 2030, as well as to address the UN SDG. Okay, next, please. So this is where we have, in terms of where we are in terms of our open science. Actually, we started way before 2019 in the phase 1 between 2015 to 2016, and the phase 2 of the Newton funded project. The Ministry of Higher Education has actually coordinated this, making the project implementer for some research management project, of which there is an open science element where we actually look at the research data repository. So this was the beginning of the idea of open science within the 5 research university first, because we realized that there are many more data within these 5 research university, mainly because they are research university, and also because they are the older university in Malaysia, so they have been doing research longer. There are more research data here. In 2016, at the same time, ASM participated in an APAC meeting. I think Datuk Maslan and Puan Hazami actually went to this meeting and presented a series of discussion and had a series of meetings regarding open science, and then they actually ASM initiated this with under the auspice of MOSP, looking at the open science initiative for Malaysia. So in 2019, the Malaysian Open Science Platform was established and launched, and we begin the implementation of the project to actually begin a proper open science project, where we wanted to actually make sure that we have the infrastructure and also train people for data gathering and data stewardship. But we again decided that to make this easier, perhaps, we started off with the 5 research university, as mentioned earlier, because these 5 research universities are the older universities with a lot more data. So if we actually have something to fall back on in terms of repository or depositing data, then we have enough data to actually work on. So next slide, please. So why is open science important? Okay, there are many reasons why they are important. First, we want to encourage our researchers to do responsible science. So open science actually reinforces the open scientific inquiry and promote research quality and integrity. Because if you remember, I mentioned one of them just now was a FAIR principle. Through the reproducibility and accessibility of this, a lot of verification can be done, so we can avoid fraud. We also would like to democratize science. Okay, we do not want science to just remain in the institution, because most of this research are publicly funded and they are accountable to the society. I mean, in terms of research fund. So we are looking at return of public investment in scientific research. And we would like to promote the use of data and enable citizen science. ASM had actually a webinar recently on citizen science, where Datuk Maslan also spoke about this, which I think is something that we can enable a lot of public out there to be involved. Businesses actually can benefit through this. We had some discussion on how open science can lead to open innovation, or how important open science is for open innovation for the industry, because they would be able to access into the data or the knowledge that has been generated by the institution through research to actually maybe enhance or value add to their products. And we will also like, because these are the data are more open, then we'll be able to make more science-informed policies, okay, for the policymakers, without having to actually guess a lot of things. In terms of research management, okay, this would this would definitely enhance the research management process, because what we can do is look at the data and use or maximize the use of this data. Also, it will help us to minimize the cost of unnecessary duplication of research. We know that sometimes we have a researcher up in the north and another researcher down south in different time during different time, maybe actually trying to do this, not the same but similar type of research, of which they probably do not have to, but could actually use or benefit from previous data. So this also helps better planning in research management and funding, and ensure that all data are properly stored. We have, as I mentioned, in the 5 research university, UM being the oldest, followed by USM and UKM, and we have many researchers who have actually gathered a lot of information and knowledge, but have actually retired, but their knowledge are being stored in a lab book somewhere in the laboratory, which may not have been stored properly. So, and it may be lost. So it is time for us to actually look at this and make sure that these valuable assets are actually coordinated. And last but not least, it helps scientific progress, in terms of finding solution to global, local and global challenges where we have big data, in the open science, and it helps to foster collaboration and actually foster research to go beyond the disciplinary boundary. One very good example is the Human Genome Project, which actually completed 2 years ahead of time, mainly because at that time the WWW is already in existence and researchers are open to sharing their data. So that helps to actually not only minimize costs, but also to help a project to complete at a faster rate. Okay, next slide. I think this is the final slide. Okay. Anyway, so this is the last slide. This is the excerpt from the joint statement at the APEC community that we worked on, especially Dato' Maslan worked on. Open science is here to stay, and APEC member, APEC economists, shall we say that, agreed that that we actually all, as much as possible, will be involved and will participate in open science. But open science does not require all that data to be freely open. They would be under the fair guiding principles, and all the economies and stakeholders of Asia and Pacific would support open science with the aim to make the data-intensive science as a fundamental resource in addressing the national and regional challenge to foster sustainable, innovative, and inclusive socio-economic growth. So I think this is my last slide. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Saada. Okay, so Professor has described, all right, MOSP. The focus is on making the data as open as possible and as close as necessary, and the focus of MOSP is on research data. Prof, we are going to pose some questions later on to you, Prof, after the end of this session when everybody has presented, yeah? All right,
okay.
Thank you very much, Prof. Saada. Okay, next I would like to invite Professor Emerita Dr. Maslan. In the context of open science that Dato is going to describe to us is on the initiatives by various countries worldwide that have established the open science in research agenda and the initiative through government, ministries, funding agencies, universities, research centers, research institutes, even libraries, and also scholarly publishers. So Dato' Maslan will present on the global landscape for open science, and in this context, Dato' will also discuss how open science is changing the landscape, the global landscape of research. Over to you, Dato'.
Thank you. Thank you, Abriza, and I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting me to give some insight on what's happening globally. I will not be talking about individual countries as to what they are doing, but I'll be saying something about intergovernmental efforts or efforts at the global level. So it is how I'm going to approach this subject now. Can you change the slide, please? Okay, now I'm going to first of all talk about the efforts or the initiatives under the International Science Council. Later you see me talking about UNESCO, OECD and all that, but because I am working for the International Science Council, you should know that under the International Science Council, when it comes to data and information, it has three major initiatives. The first is about data itself. And for the longest time, it has this ICSO World Data Systems Initiative. ICSO is the old name for the International Science Council, but in this case, it's talking more about the stewardship of data and how you access data. But when it comes to open science, that is being promulgated or promoted under the Committee on Data for Science and Technology, which is CODATA. In fact, for Malaysia, our first efforts came from talking with or getting guidance from CODATA. And most recently, I think in the last few months, the council, the governing board has set up a committee talking about scientific publications, and now they have set up an international network for the availability of scientific publications. So these are the three initiatives under the International Science Council. Change the slide, please. Now, under the International Science Council, they have set up this African Open Science Platform. It was launched in 2016. Now, I have to say that it is not yet a platform as such, but what they have at the end of their work was, it says here, the landscape report, but not the platform itself. And as you know, if you want to set up the platform, it costs a lot of money. The Alexandria Library in Egypt did agree to host this platform, but I think there's still some discussions on who's going to fund that platform. ISC has committed a few $100,000 for this purpose. But you can see that it is within this context of having set up the African platform that they asked my office, the regional office for Asia and the Pacific, if we could do the same thing for Asia and the Pacific, which is why we first broached that subject with CODATA in maybe in 2018 already, but the work really started in 2019. Can I change the slide, please? Okay, the next global level initiative that is very important for us to know about is the UNESCO initiative. And I'm sure many of you received the survey from UNESCO to try and find out from you your insights on open science. You know that UNESCO is a UN body representing over 150 countries. And it was felt by UNESCO that if there was going to be global leadership, it would be theirs. They would take on this leadership. And it makes sense because, as I said, they are an intergovernmental group with resources to implement open science. Moreover, if you look at Article 27 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, or the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 27 says everyone has the right to share in scientific advancement and its benefits. And clearly, open science would serve that purpose. And so what they've done is they have put together a consultative process which they think is inclusive and transparent. As I said, many of you received the survey, and of course what they need to do is to define what are the shared values and what are the principles for open science, and on top of that, through their consultations, recognize what are the concrete measures that need to be put in place to get open access and open data. Of course, we know that this will cost money, so a lot of countries, although interested, are a bit apprehensive about wanting to do this. They will of course have to support awareness, understanding, and especially, which is very important, is policy development. Now, I have to say that at the UNESCO level, which is the intergovernmental level, there are what we would call domain-specific data. And I'll give you my example of domain-specific data in tropical biodiversity. In fact, I'm struggling a bit with this, because even though there is a platform where we can share all of our tropical biodiversity data, most countries refuse to do that. And there's only one reason for that, because they distrust the platform, and because they feel that the information that they provide will be used without their permission, or will be used commercially, and they will lose out. So these are some of the things that UNESCO has to put right, at the global level. So there is trust in this open science system or ecosystem. And but to me, at least, UNESCO actually has there is good rationale for UNESCO to lead this globally. ISC, which is the International Science Council, cannot lead this globally because we do not represent all of the countries, and we are also representing science only at the academy level. Next slide, please. Now I'm putting, next slide. I'm also putting here the OECD report, just to show you as an example of a very global, although it's OECD, it actually is wider than the OECD countries, and they are a big proponent of open science. In fact, if I look at the national guidelines, most of the materials on definitions are coming from OECD, but you will know that there is the Foster definition of OECD and others. But don't forget to look up OECD if you're looking at the global, what is a global landscape for open science. I don't want to do it here because there's too much, and you can do it very successfully through just a Google search. Next slide, please. Now, so those are the international platforms, and we've looked at them in various ways. But when we thought about a regional platform, which is not quite a global platform, we thought what might work might be a regional platform. And in order to put that in place, we realized that we needed a political platform. And Hazami and I had several discussions, and we decided that we could push for open science, or Malaysia could push for open science through APEC, the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation. And this is how we started our initiative with APEC. I won't give you a rundown of everything that happened, but there were times when I was about to give up, because even though the public-private the policy on STI partners agreed to an open science advocacy, when they took it back to their capitals, they were not very supportive. So there was a time when I thought, this is not going to fly. But on the other hand, while they did not provide us funding, they decided that this would still be an activity which would be self-funded by Malaysia. And because we knew the long-term benefit of open science, ISC, I mean, my office, together with the Malaysian government, supported so have been supporting all of the activities related to the APEC open science. And after many events, these are what we achieved in terms of a statement. So I know Professor Nur Saadah gave you a version of the open science statement, of the APEC open science statement. There have been some changes there. For instance, they did not want to refer only to FAIR, but to also other platforms for sharing information. But if you want there was maybe I should just capture the gist of what the statement gives us. I know that Nusada gave us all the sentences, but just for you to know that finally APEC acknowledges that open science captures a systematic change the way research has been carried out. So that was the first thing. And that, of course, they acknowledge that COVID-19 has demonstrated how open science can accelerate scientific solutions. In fact, there is no turning back. After COVID-19, we cannot go back to the way we have been doing our science. And then there's always, as I said just now, there's distrust of why should I put all my data there in this platform. And so we assure everybody that the data are not all, should not be all fully open and accessible, that it should only be available under well-defined conditions. And I think Dr. Adam mentioned as open as possible and as closed as necessary. Because open science has a vital role in the economic growth of a country. And this sometimes is not well demonstrated, but something we have to prove to the other countries to make this a global movement. And surely open science will provide us that through open science, we can provide this support for seamless access to data. And this is the important thing, that APEC, the statement supports open science. Now, why is this statement important? Because this statement will be brought to the heads of states statement, and when the heads of states adopt this or endorse this statement, inshallah, the open science will have very, very good standing within APEC itself. Can you change the slide, please? Okay, now, one thing I didn't mention in terms of the global platform, the global landscape, which I think you should know, is that in Europe, for instance, open science is well established, and there are 4 ways by which they establish open science. One is intergovernmental, which is what UNESCO is trying to do, and within European Commission and all that, there is this intergovernmental adoption of open science. The other is it's inter-organizations. So there are some organizations that have got together to share the data, and it doesn't include everyone. That this is, I guess, it's because it's difficult to do these things at the official intergovernmental level. But there are some organizations that are leading open science, and so they have got together, and it is an inter-organizational collection, you know. The other is, and there are quite a few of them, completely commercial. You can pay, you know, for going into their groups, and I was also intrigued by that. But I think what I like most is like-minded groups. Groups like, I'm an astronomer, so astronomers, we love to share our data. So astronomers share the data amongst the astronomical community easily and freely. And of course, I'm trying to do the same for tropical countries in sharing their, say, tropical biodiversity data, which would be like what I would call like-minded groups. And I think this will be extremely successful because it's containable. So, okay, then go back to my last slide, which is what are the challenges of open science? Now, there are firstly socio-cultural issues that among the researchers there is lack of awareness, as you know, of the benefits and importance of opening up their research. They are reluctant to change their current workflow and practices because this will be time and effort consuming, you know. So you have enough to do in your research without also having to worry about where to put your data. The next challenge is in the technological aspect. Now, although technologies have rapidly improved, there are still some aspects that need more support to make it easy for researchers to include open science in their work. And this includes software for analyzing data and all that. The third, which is mentioned many times, is political. This is, to me, the biggest challenge of all. We are lucky that in Malaysia, we have political commitment. In a lot of countries around the world, there is no political commitment because new policies need to be formulated, strategies, and that is a long-term process. The other challenge is at the organizational level, and this is this inter-university platform you're trying to set up. You will see that there are these problems at the organizational level where organizations must acknowledge efforts to accommodate the open science workflow. I mentioned workflow many times, but there is also this issue of at the institutional level, where if you want to encourage open science practice, you must change your reward system. That reward system must value open science and scientists who practice open science, either when they are being promoted or when there's funding to be given for research. And this maybe is a long-term income, cannot come very shortly, because you need to have your ranking and all that, and your rankings have almost contradictory to what we are talking about in open science, the way I see it. Then there's the economic aspect challenge, where we know it costs a lot of money to put these things together. And lastly, the legal aspect, which comes with the policy aspect. But this is very important in order to protect, as we know, privacy, personal information, commercial interests, and safety and national security. So there are ways that we have to move forward in this, and that scientists need to be more aware of open science. Institutions and organizations must give recognition to open science. We must have a common standard for information sharing to expedite the whole process, and that we must actually make it mandatory that publishing in a reusable form they must be made mandatory. And of course, we all know this, we hope this, and that there will be human resource support for open science, about managing and supporting the use of the digital data, because without data stewards, there's no point talking about open science. And it's one of the biggest challenge in creating capacity. And to me too, there's no point having all that wonderful data if we don't have tools to analyze this growing amount of data. And these are all challenges internationally. So don't worry if you think Malaysia is having all these challenges. We are not far behind from a lot of countries in the world. I know I haven't given you a rundown of what's happening in other countries, but I think you can Google this. So I'm just giving a broad brush of what's happening internationally. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dato'. Thank you. I particularly like the way you categorize the open science landscape initiative, the 4 categories. Yeah, Dato'. One of it is the like-minded groups, of which later on I would like to pose the question to you. Dato', thank you also because you have shared the various challenges at the global scene on open science, of which our next speaker will highlight one of the challenges. And this challenge is actually for there is a need for governmental mandate to propel open science movement forward. And Dato' Rohana will share with us the scope of the policies and guidelines for MOSP, as well as hopefully Dato' will also share with us the specific strategies and actions aimed at promoting open science principles, and later on hopefully acknowledging open science practices in Malaysia. So Dato' Rohana, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Abriza. Thank you very much to the organizing committee for inviting. Let me take you through the policies and terminologies and the guideline on open science implementation. for this afternoon. Yeah. Next slide, please. Okay. This is where, you know, I'm going to take you through the landscape study and national guideline working group. Actually, I'm not talking about the landscape, but it's about the guideline. And this guideline was set up with the help of the other two working group, that is the capacity building awareness and infrastructure working group. So now, who is it meant for? Yeah, who is this guideline meant for? For all staff, researchers, students, and any other person involved in the research under the auspices of Malaysian Universities Research Institute and research entities, government entities. And also all research activities that is conducted in all universities, research institute and government entities that receive funding from Malaysian government. So, and all stages of data life cycle before, during, and after. So this guideline will operate in conjunction with other related national and institutional policies guideline and the Malaysian laws and government policies. And the guideline shall not apply to research activity conducted for third-party organization or consultancy services conducted for third-party organization, including work carried out using or by Malaysian universities, research institute, and government entities, research facilities. Okay, right. So we are clear on who needs to use these guidelines. Okay, next. And in this national guideline that we have prepared, the 6 chapters, and what is the purpose of this guideline? Actually, it's meant to provide better management of research data, yeah, and also assist researchers to deposit and retain research data file, data set, publication, and record to contribute to scientific advancement through sharing. And also to ensure that research data generated is managed in a systematic manner to ensure quality. So, so these are the 6 chapters that actually describe most of the things that I've said just now. So next slide, please. Okay, before we even discuss further, I think these are the terminologies that we need to know, you know, if you're talking about open science. Who are the data owner? It's the institution, which are the employer of the researchers, or the research institution receiving and administering the grant. And who are the data originator? They are the researcher who produce the research data, and they will be credited for their work, also known as the data creator. And data custodian. Data owner, the institution is also data custodian, but they will have a data custodian, an IT individual or organization responsible for the IT infrastructure, providing and protecting data. Yeah, and who are the data user? Individual who reuse data and have the responsibility to acknowledge the sources of the data by citation or giving appropriate credit to data originators. And data curator, responsible for organizing and integrating data collected from various sources, and data steward, protect the integrity and quality of data. So these are the important players, or I call them the actors in open science. Okay, and you see, for a researcher, when they do research, they will come up with research results. So they will have to think, what do you want to do with your research result? Do you want to share it, or do you want to protect it? Yeah, protect it meaning to patent, so you can keep it to patent. But if you want to share, how do you share your research results? One way of doing it is through publication, and the other one is through depositing your research data on this open platform. Okay, and if you want to publish it, you can publish it in open access journal, and it will be in the open platform. And if you have in a normal journal, we can sort of archive it and put it on the open platform. So this, if you put it open access, we call it gold access, and normal other journal, we call it green access. And you can deposit your research data as well on the platform. Next slide, please. Okay, for a definition of open science that we use in this guideline. like Prof. Datuk Mazlan said just now, we adopt this definition from OECD Science, Technology and Industry Policy Papers. So open science is defined as effort by researchers, government, research funding agencies, or the scientific community itself to make the primary output of publicly funded research result, publication and research data publicly accessible in digital format with no or minimal restriction as a mean for accelerating research. These efforts are in the interest of enhancing transparency and collaboration and fostering innovation. And we use the FAIR principle. Next slide, please. Okay, just now I was talking about you can either share your data through publication or you can share your research data on this open access. When you want to share your research data, it has to go through a research data life cycle. Okay, 6 steps in here. First, the acquisition of the data, and then processing, analyzing, curation, sharing, and reuse. So you see in this diagram, why I show this diagram, because I like it to show you the players here, the data originator, the data owner, data scientist, data steward, and data custodian, and also the data user. They have their own, what do you call that, their own way of handling this data. Okay, so for this process to go on, the research manager is very important. So I'm glad that this is a research manager platform, because your role here is to manage that the whole process, the whole cycle actually takes place in a proper manner. Okay, next. In this guideline, we also, actually in this guideline, we also discuss on the infrastructure of MOSP, and where MOSP harvests the metadata from institutional repository, but no research data will be deposited in MOSP. Yeah, everything, all the data will be in the institutional repository in all the five research university, and MOSP will connect the domain-specific repositories such as satellite COVID-19 from MOSP and RADAR's MOST and also MAMPU. So MOSP is a portal. MOSP portal is the central gateway for this open access. In the guideline, we also covers development of institutional repository. An ideal feature of trusted data sharing platform is having a good data request handling process. And the reused data must be properly cited and acknowledged to the data originator. And cost of infrastructure should be planned, okay, to ensure that sufficient storage capacity to deposit raw data. And here, we also discuss about governance in open science, in public funded research, and at the national level and at the institutional level. So the role and responsibility of at the national level of MOST, and at the institutional level, the Institute of Higher Learning, that is the Deputy Vice Chancellor for Research, and also the Research Institute, the Deputy Director General of Research. So this is where the implementation is very important for all these players to take part and make sure that they know their roles and responsibility. And in this guideline also, we put up a data management plan, because data management plan is a key element for good data management. So we also have this in the guideline. Okay, next. Next slide, please. Okay, to answer the question of governmental mandates to propel open science movement, this is the slide that we put up to show the data sharing framework in open science. Okay, the national guideline in open science is prepared by making reference to existing policy and guideline for open science, which were developed in other countries, as well as based on relevant laws and policies and regulation related to open science in Malaysia. So this is intended to raise awareness, yeah, and establish early adopter of open science. So the current guideline will adapt 3 mandatory three kinds of measure. Yeah, mandatory rules, which is the stick, and the incentive mechanism, which is the carrot, and the enablers, the development of soft and hard infrastructure, such as building a trusted sharing platform on open science. So the mandatory rules is that data sharing in open science is a compulsory requirement or a prerequisite in research grant agreement, or spelled out in national strategies or institutional policy. So that will be the mandatory rules. And the incentive mechanism will incentivize those that involve or celebrate or promote data sharing in open science in the form of financial or non-financial incentive. So we hope that, this is going to really work, where you can put up a KPI where you put your work on open science and you will have some incentive there, right? And we need to communicate actually more on open science. And we hope to see, many what you call a successful story of fostering industrial collaboration at international level, all being used by sharing it on our open science platform. Okay, all right. I think that's all for now. And if you have any questions, just post your question. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dato'. Thank you. All right. Dato' has shared with us, okay, some of the things that are being covered in the our national guideline, okay, for open science. And from Dato' explanation just now, the national guideline is meant for public funded research, yeah, public funded research, and making the research output available, including the data on open access, right? Okay, Dato', yeah? Okay, so, all right. Okay, so we have completed with the 3 presentations, and we are now coming to the Q&A sessions, of which I believe the panelists are also able to view some of the questions that are being posed, but I'm going to read them out, okay? These questions are, they are short questions, okay? Some of these are actually being answered, have been answered by the panelists just now. For example, the first one, yeah? Okay, I will read out it to you. There's no name here, anonymous attendee. Who will be the owner of the collected data? Prof. Saada would like to answer that, Prof. Saada.
Yeah, thank you, Prof. Abriza. I believe that, as you mentioned, that's already been answered. The owner will be, the institution where the researchers actually reside. Okay, it doesn't move to a national thing, but, it will be at the institution where you reside. But what we do is actually, for Malaysia at least, we would like to actually be able to crawl into and get the information when needed or when requested or required. But again, there would be a certain protocol, maybe some of these data, sensitive data, then, the owner at the institution can determine whether to release the data or not release the data. So again, the owner is institution.
Yes, this the national guideline has taken care of this, right, Dato' Rohana, yeah? Okay, yes. And we have to bear in mind that the data here is publicly funded, data from publicly funded research. Okay, yes. Thank you very much. All right. Okay, the next question is, yeah?
May I just add a little bit here?
Yeah.
Just for information, Malaysia has not done this, or rather, Malaysian funding body has not done this yet. But we are aware that if you are actually requesting funding body funds from places like the European Union, okay, you have to have a proper data management and open science policy for you to be able to actually apply for the grant and actually be funded. You may have a very fantastic, proposal, research proposal, but if you do not have that open science policy, at least at the institution level, you're not be successful in getting the grant. So, worldwide, people are moving towards this. I know also in the Latin America, they are actually moving towards this as well. So the owner is still the institution, but you have to come out with this plan in order for you to actually enable your researchers to actually get funds internationally.
Okay, Prof, at least at the research universities, are there initiatives regarding this, making it mandatory?
Yeah, there are already initiatives. University of Malaya, I know for a fact, we have an open science policy that has been endorsed by our board, university board member, or university board. So we are at the moment working on the guideline on, when and how to deposit or put the data in a repository. I know UPM is also working, already have a repository, but they are working the other way around. They have the repository first, I think, and moving towards the policy. I know UTM is also like us working on the open science policy. So at least in the research university, we are moving towards that as well, because we do not want to constrain or limit our researchers from applying to all these other fundings that are available abroad that requires the data management plan and open science policy.
Yes. Okay, thank you, Prof. All right, I would like to move to the next question. Does open science include the data of intellectual property? This, Prof. Datuk, Datuk Rohana,
Yeah.
I guess this is meant for you, Datuk.
Okay, I think just now when I say, when you have your result, research result, you have to decide whether you want to share it, by publication, or put your research data in the repository, or you can protect it by patenting it. So
Yes.
once you protect, you have patented, then you can put it on the platform. Yeah. So but before that, you don't have to put it on. This is where, I think the important role of data steward and, to actually help you through with this. If you want to patent, then you don't put it on you can put it on a separate platform for you before you go and put it on the, open access. Yeah.
Okay, right, thank you. All right, the next question is on open access publishing, which is one pillar in open science. Yeah? So currently researchers need to pay to publish in open access journals. How about open science? Prof. Sada can answer this. Prof. Sada. Is
Thank
that
you.
right? Prof. Sada.
Yes. As I mentioned, open science does not only mean open access. Okay, open
Yes.
access, you have to pay for the access to the journals and some of the supplementary. Okay, in a lot of cases, open science means you actually deposit your raw data, your raw data into the repository, in a curated manner, so people can actually use it. The raw data is actually not proprietary, actually, especially if it's publicly funded. We are also, I know the initiative, various initiatives in Europe, in Australia, and also in Ireland, which is also Europe, and also in Mexico. Okay, that are talking to publishers, and I know European Union has made a bigger headway in talking to publishers, and the two major publisher, Elsevier, I think, especially, is also very much aware, and they are talking now about instead of where we do citation, we say paper citation. They are actually talking about data citation rather than paper citation now in Europe. So I believe that they are looking at this very seriously, especially the publishers, because that would also be some cutoff for their business. So but at the UNESCO team, we actually do discuss this quite extensively, and hopefully when the final UNESCO recommendation comes out in terms of open access, in terms of whether it is free or whether that would be there in the guideline. But as it is at the moment, to decide whether it's free or not, because it's not the paper, it's the raw data, and it is at the institution. So it's the institution's prerogative to whether charge or not charge. Some institution, the ones that I talked to in Australia, they make it free. Japan also make it free. China makes it free, but there are some institutions in Europe that actually charge for the data, but it's not as expensive or as extensive as what the publishers would charge.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Prof.
And may I say something?
Yeah, yes,
I
yes.
think
That
going forward in the
Excellent.
long term, you can have an agreement, between two countries or two universities or 5 universities or 5 countries, how you want to access each other's data, even though you're on the same platform as others. Because there is, when you want to enter somebody's website for the data, you have to get a password and everything. You cannot just enter anybody's database without permission. That's the first place.
It's true.
It's the first thing. And so you can decide, of course, Malaysia can decide that within the ASEAN region, we will share all information. But, Europeans have to pay, maybe. And so this would have to be a longer term policy decision. And we can make that. And I think that the platform will be flexible enough that it will allow this.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Datuk Mazlan. All right, the next question is from Nur Hanisah Ismail. How does the National Open Science Initiative translated to what researchers on the ground can actually contribute as first movers in showing support? For example, in designing the dissemination of research output to a certain open science platform. Any takers for this question?
I think Dr. Rana showed just now where you have, a data owner, data creator, etc. So if you are the researcher, okay, and on the first ground, you are actually the data creator, okay, or data originator, okay. So it, it would be good or beneficial if you can design it so that when you actually deposit it into the repository, it's already curated in a way that people can actually access and use it. If not, then you really have to sit down with the data stewards at the institution after you have generated the data and to actually curate the data so that when you deposit it in, it'll be in a form where when people need to use it, they will be understandable and actually will be able to understand the data and make fully use of it, optimize the use of it. So you can actually at the beginning look at what the platform requires and maybe design the data that you're collecting in that format. For example, we are actually now ready, just for everybody's information, with the COVID-19 platform, which is a spin-off from this MOSP. Because of the COVID-19, we thought let's start off with a because it's a kind of a new area, new output that we are actually getting. So we actually built what we call COVID-19 MOSP, okay, COVID-19 Malaysia Open Science Platform. But unfortunately, we are a bit slow because I think data have been generated. So now we are looking at how we're going to put in or how researchers can put in the data. Hopefully, we'll come up with a guideline on how to access and put in your data into the platform soon. But if you already know how it is going to be formatted, then perhaps it's easier for you to design it at an early stage.
Yeah.
Can I say something too? Yeah.
Yes, Dato'. Yeah, Dato'. Yes,
Can I just add to that? Just not a comment.
Yes, the question. Yeah.
What they are hoping to do is they say that they want to contribute to
MOSP,
this whole initiative, and they want to show support, perhaps by designing the dissemination of research outputs, they said. But I presume that MOSP is sending out a survey to all the researchers, right, about what they think might be a good platform, like how should the the data protocol be and all that.
Yeah.
Because this is
That's
how
very
they
important.
can contribute to you.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Yes.
I got the question wrong. Yes.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. As I mentioned earlier, there are three groups, and the infrastructure group is looking at the platform, and they have actually conducted or sending out surveys. So you might want to check with your RMCs or your research management office to see if there are any surveys there, and maybe actually put in your request or suggestions.
Yes. Yeah, at the university level, yes, the researchers can approach, okay, the universities, okay, because we understand that the 5 research universities are already on their way, okay, to establish at least a data repository infrastructure to advocate open science. Right, thank you. Okay, the last question that we have here on the board is that, yeah, Dr. Rohana, yes?
Inside the guideline, we also put data management plan. So this is when you write up your grant for research and all, if you have a data management plan, then it will be very good for you to straight away go into this platform for the repositories. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Okay. The last question that we have here is, okay, we have a few more questions. All right. Okay, that's it. I'm going to read the other 3 questions, okay, because we are running out of time. All right. I believe the organizer has given us about 10 more minutes, okay, to proceed. Some researchers are supporting the open educational resource, and it is part of open science. Okay, this is just another pillar. However, many researchers are feeling afraid and sensitive to share their research data or to be open. What is your opinion about this issue? Any takers?
Okay, when you're talking about the open repository, that is an open source. Okay, to me, it doesn't actually matter. But when we have the open science, it's more institutionalized. Yes. So we have guidelines and and policies in place to actually protect also the researchers, the researcher and their output. So rather than you just blast it anywhere, there is actually a proper guideline for us. So I don't. I believe, although like mentioned earlier, open resources or open science platform out there that is more open with not a proper guideline and policy that would be free for all. The open science initiative that most countries and most institutions are looking into, okay, is actually the following the FAIR or the other fairer now or other principles that actually help to govern the data, so that this data and the researchers actually are protected.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Prof. Sada. Yes, I also understand that our Malaysian, especially Malaysian researchers, they are very cautious about sharing. Yeah. In fact, there's a saying that Datuk Mazlan also shared that they rather share the toothbrush, right, rather than share their research data. Okay. So, all right. The next question is how. Do we need to register to ORCID ID to be a depositor of open science? This is from a librarian. I don't think so.
No, I don't think so. ORCID ID is just, yeah. But the Malaysian one is not, because it will be at the institution. So once we have the example of where it's with the 5 universities, then we can actually expand this to all the other universities and institutions. To be able to have the.
Yeah, but this is maybe I can just comment about this, Prof. This is a good practice because ORCID ID is an open identity, which is part of some of the mechanism and tools in open science. So it will be also a good practice because this is actually being practiced by major citation database, ORCID ID. Scopus actually implements ORCID ID. Yeah. All right. Publishers also implement ORCID ID. Yeah. All right. So the last question that we have here on the board is how data citation may help researchers in terms of visibility of the research. And this is interesting. How data citation may help researchers in terms of visibility of the research.
Dr. Maslan, you're mute if you want to
Maslan,
answer.
yes.
Sorry, I had some talking to somebody else. Okay, so I'm not quite sure why they've got data citation here, but I know that in some countries, and I think this is the way going forward as well, that depositing your data in some format on the platform is going to be considered a product, just like your paper is going to be a product. So just by depositing your data in that format, etc., which is controlled by the platform, will be a form of recognition of your work, and it should become part of you know, what you would consider putting in when you go for promotion. That's how I see it going in the future. So you don't have to wait for your data analysis to finish and then you get your paper published to get recognition for your work. And I think this is the way to incentivize people to put the data on your platform. And of course, if you're going to put your data on the platform, it will give visibility to your research. And knowing very well that not everybody will be able to access your data, but people know you have deposited that data there, and therefore you will get recognition or visibility for your research.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. Yes, Prof. Sada?
Yeah, I agree with Dr. Maslan, because actually, you know, you can put in, I mean, if your data is already there, you don't have to wait for the paper to be published or analyzed. You know, people can actually already use your data and cite you. And also, I think that would be bigger visibility, because then people know that you have done it first before anybody else, because the data is already there, right? Prof. Abriza, I just wanted to highlight that there are some comments or questions on the chat that I'm looking at, and one of them is from HUSM, that
Yes.
Dr. Nurul Hashimah.
Okay, I will read this. All right. This is from Nurul Hashimah, USM. We have a platform on neurodata where we collect data from HUSM hospital. Yeah. All right. So it's meant for sharing. It's meant for sharing, but we are still doing data entry. But the platform is ready. But we are bound by ethics. Okay, not sure what ethics, the ethics provision here. How can you help us? We are not funded a lot to include analytics and visualization. You can go to myneurodbcsUSM.my. We are self-funded still. Self means personal and tumpang-tumpang. Okay. Yes. Prof. Sada would like to say that. Prof. Someone sent this question. Okay. Prof. Sada?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Nurul Hashimah, because I think this is a very good initiative. You are already ready to share. And you have a platform. My suggestion is actually, if you would like to go and talk to your RMC, because they are involved in the Open Science Platform, and the 5 RMCs, they are aware, I think, each research university, since you are from USM, we have a representative on the alliance as well as on the infrastructure committee. So now they are actually looking at it. So if you go there, they'll probably be able to help you in, formatting your platform to actually suit into the MOSP or the Malaysian Open Science Platform. So, you can easily be connected, rather than, we have to do some interference in between, before this. So my suggestion is, please go to your representative. I'm not sure if it's Prof. That lady, Prof.
Rosni.
Prof. Rosni.
Rosni.
But there is already a representative talking.
And also, if at this point they need assistance in creating metadata to suit data on neurology, I believe they can enlist some help from the data stewards that have been trained. From yes,
that's
right. We have 2 certified data stewards. One from RMC, Cik Hafiz, and the other one is from the library.
Datuk Maslan.
Okay, in terms of ethics, there is a national committee on ethics, especially medical research. So I don't think us in the open science can give you advice on the ethics. So there is this national committee, I don't know now.
The IRB, yeah.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
IRB.
So they should go to that committee, and I'm sure each university too might even have a committee.
Yes, we have an IRB. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
But again, I think I'm sure in the guideline as well, Dr. Rohana would have put it in that, all data to be put into the open science must first be anonymized.
Yes.
So you, you will
Mm.
be an anonymous database.
Mm.
You must actually have done declaration and anonymize it. So your RMC would know how to do it, I think.
Yep, yep.
The data steward has been trained to know how to do it.
Yes, yes, yeah.
Okay, can I take one more question? And this question is for Datuk Mazlan. Datuk, Datuk, there are so many organizations dealing with open science.
Yep.
How is UNESCO going to be able to take the leadership?
Okay, that is a good question, because nobody, I mean, a lot of people think that UNESCO has not provided good lead, solid leadership in the past. But if you want to do anything global, my view is you must have intergovernmental consensus or intergovernmental commitment. So as long, because global science has to be a global movement, because we cannot have certain countries in it and then there's some people left behind. So the role of UNESCO is to make sure nobody gets left behind, because Europeans may not care whether Papua New Guinea is part of open science or not, but UNESCO will care.
Yeah,
As I said, UNESCO has the authority, has the mandate, the authority, has the moral standing to assist developing countries. And which is why I advocate UNESCO as the leader to bring this forward, because they will definitely have to take care of those issues of leaving nobody behind. I mean, everybody else can say, you know what, I don't care, I just want to take care of only a small group. So, and that's why I think it's UNESCO that will have the moral standing and hopefully the technical standing too, if we give it to them, to make sure nobody is left behind.
May I add to that one? Because
yes, thank you.
Okay, in the UNESCO initiative, okay, what I see, they actually have divided this into about 5-6 groups. Okay, I think the most difficult group, I'm sorry to say this, is the Asia group, because the Latin America, they are already working in a team together. Okay, everybody is in a team. Even Africa is very strong in terms of as a team, and the Arabic countries also, there is already a team. Asia, because I think mainly because Asia is big, it's too big, and some are moving faster than other countries. For example, China, Japan, Korea is like, yeah, way ahead. But at least Malaysia, we are doing something. But the other places like Thailand, Indonesia, even Australia do not have a policy yet. Although Australia is still is doing is already doing open science for 10 years, more than 10 years now. So the most difficult bit is Asia, because we had some UNESCO stakeholder town hall recently, and of course we have members from Nepal, from as I mentioned, Papua New Guinea, and they are not as fast as the others, and infrastructure is not there, so it's quite tough. So UNESCO now is looking into how to actually make sure that everybody is not left out.
And I would say the Asia Pacific is always within the UN system the biggest problem, because of the greatest inhomogeneity amongst the members, political difference, level of science, as I said, Papua New Guinea versus China, and then there's political conflict as China versus India. There is that aspect, and the readiness of the scientists. There are cultural differences, economic differences. Any difference you care to name is there in Asia Pacific, unfortunately. And but then who is the one who's going to consolidate all of this? it's still, I think UNESCO is still the best best organization.
Yeah, UNESCO is trying. I think the headquarters, the Asia UNESCO in Indonesia, Jakarta, is working very hard to make sure that
And
minus Korea and China, okay, they are working very hard.
I mean, some people say, just like the space sector, do something amongst yourself, just exclude Japan, China, India. Because they are outliers, But I don't think that's in the end the solution, But ROAC, my office, we are going to fund, we're going to help sponsor pilot studies in many countries in Asia and the Pacific. We are committed to that already.
Yeah.
Yes, we are.
All right. Oh, that has been a very interesting discussion with the panelists. Okay, we have just one more questions, and Datuk Rohana will need to answer this. Where can I get all the guidelines on this open science? Any website? I would say that this is our own MOSP.
Yes.
I suspect this is on MOSP. Datuk?
Yeah, we have, we have gone through a few stakeholders meeting and all that. We're correcting it, and we're going into the STIPAC meeting, the council meeting this week. And I think after that, it will be up in the ASM website, I think. Yeah, Professor? Yeah.
Yes, we have to get approval first from the STIPAC. And because this is MOST's initiative as well. So it will have to go up to Ministry of Science first. Okay, so once it's cleared, the Ministry of Science, it should be up in the MOSP website, as well as I think MOST's website, most likely, and ASM's website. Yeah, so hopefully our timeline with coming up with this is, I think we are just a little bit behind time because of the STIPAC meeting, right? We have completed this, so we have to prepare and present it to STIPAC, and next is going to the Ministry of Science. So I think by either end of February or early March, it should be up already on the web.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, last words from every panelist, okay, who are behind this MOSP, from Prof. Saada, Prof. Datuk Mazlan, and Dr. Rohana. What is your hope for MOSP? Besides what you have been talking about today, what is your hope for MOSP? Prof. Saada?
Okay, I'll start off. My hope is that everybody actually will embrace this open science, because I think, it is very important for us to actually share, whatever we have discovered in terms of especially our research, for the benefit of humankind. So, as much as we share, then we will probably get a better benefit from it. So I'm hoping that, everybody will eventually, agree to share, and, let's be open about what we do in our research.
Thank you, Prof. Saada. Datuk Mazlan?
Yes, and I agree with Prof. Saada. We cannot be left behind. This is a global movement which will go with or without us. And of course, we don't want to go without us. We have to be there too. And, as I said before, COVID-19 has made us see that there is no turning back. You cannot go back to the old way of doing our work, and you can see how valuable open science has been for COVID-19. You see how China shared the data, on their genome so quickly. And of course, there's still commercial competition for vaccines, but I think a lot of the information is already out there, and that's all open science. And how can we say we will not embrace open science? It's not an option, no longer an option.
Rana.
Yes, and I think, we have brilliant mind in Malaysia. We do a lot of research. We've spent so much money doing research. So now it's time for us to share it and use this platform as much as possible. Share your knowledge, share it to everyone that is around. And one day, people will be looking at Malaysia with our, research that they never knew that we did before. So now this is the time for us to share our research. Yeah. Okay, be excited. Yeah.
Thank you very much. All right, so what have been expressed by our panelists basically wraps up, okay, the webinar session, and that is all that we have for today. And I believe the panel's wise input on the topic will allow the audience to in whatever role that they play as research managers, as researchers, as administrators, or even as librarians, okay, future data stewards, to actually unfold many the unanswered questions that they have before this, and that's why they attend our very first webinar on open science. So on behalf of the speakers, Professor Nur Saada, Datuk Mazlan, and also Datuk Dr. Rohana, all right, I would like to thank you, all right, and I would like to also take the opportunity to thank, okay, the organizer, all right. And have a great day, everybody. And I would like to pass this to the organizer, Ms. Shama. Yes. Thank you very much.